Good morning, everyone. I'm Blayne Gilmer. Welcome into Southeastern 14. This is the SEC Morning Report. We come to you each and every weekday morning, Monday through Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern, 9 o'clock Central. Then on Friday, it switches over to Jake's Takes with Jake Crane of Crane & Company from the Daily Wire. We appreciate everyone tuning in right here. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications because it is time. It is Monday and time to tell you what we learned from each of these SEC teams in this previous week. Of course, we won't be talking about Tennessee or South Carolina. They were on bye weeks. Auburn also was on bye, maybe someone else that I'm not even thinking of right now, but we will go through every team that played in week 6 as we ramp up for week 7. Guys, we appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoy this content and you think it would be a good fit for your business, somebody that would target the audience that loves SEC football or SEC sports in general, then hit up Caroline.Smith at southeastern14.com and you can find out how to partner with us and be an MVP for Southeastern 14. And guys, speaking of MVPs, well, the MVP, and we always go in alphabetical order, the MVP for the Alabama Crimson Tide was Jalen Milroe. We saw that Jalen Milroe went on the road in a very hostile environment, faced a very active defensive front, was taken out of his game of being able to run the football like he wanted to, and Alabama was in general as well. And he was able to produce and was able to take advantage of opportunities given to him by that back end of that Texas A&M defense. That secondary is suspect back there. We saw that as a team that they went down to Miami earlier on in the season and lost to that Miami team. Tyler Van Dyke just absolutely lit them up like a Christmas tree. That's the same Miami team that just got beat by Georgia Tech at home this past week as well. So big problems there in the secondary for Texas A&M, but Jalen Milroe, specifically what we learned about Alabama is they were able to protect him well enough. The offensive line showed some improvement, even though there was a lot of pressure from Texas A&M, guys. There was a lot of times where Texas A&M got after Milroe. You're talking about 6 sacks, but when it came down to it, they were able to protect him just well enough so he could get off some of those big throws and that he could make plays with Jermaine Burton. And Jermaine Burton is a guy that lots of people, maybe they don't like his antics or things like that, how he goes about doing stuff. But Jermaine Burton continually finds himself open down the field, makes big plays. Him and Isaiah Bond are, really the top weapons here for Alabama as they're being the most consistently targeted and the guys that Milroe finds down the field. I think Tommy Rees did a good job of tailoring this game to Milroe's strengths, and he's getting better and better at putting the ball down the field. I think still on the defensive side of the ball, there was some plays to be made for Texas A&M, but man, the pressure that Alabama generates on that side of the ball and the way that they were able to get after Max Johnson didn't allow him to see some of those things that were possibly open down the field. You got Deontay Lawson, who was coming back off of injury and just played tremendous. Also, the way that Caleb Downs has fortified that secondary back there. They struggled at the safety positions a little bit last year, but man, he comes up with a big interception. Also, 5 tackles on the day. He's just a guy that, as a true freshman, is a cut above everyone else that comes into the league and kind of has to bide their time and get used to things. But no, he's making changes to a already really good Alabama defense, and he came in there and has really fortified that back end. Also, when you got a guy in the middle that can patrol like that, it also makes you better on the outside. We know Kool-Aid was doing well already. Terrion Arnold has played really well for this defense. So, whether guys, it's people like Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell off the edge, We know what they can do. You got Deontay Lawson playing at an unbelievable level. This Alabama defense is really, really good, and I think they're playing complementary football right now. Now, with Alabama, you got your eyes set on, okay, in a couple of weeks, in this couple week span, you've got Arkansas at home and then Tennessee at home before a bye week, and you get LSU at home. So 3 straight home games that Alabama is going to get here. Can Jalen Milroe continue to play at a high level and gain confidence with these receivers going forward? They do need to run the football better, though, because still at times Milroe, he got caught by A&M disguising a coverage on him, and a safety rolled down and picked one off on him. So we'll see what happens there. But when it comes down to it, you have to be able to have balance, and they're getting more and more balance. Not the fact that, hey, they had 50-50 production out of the run of the pass, but when they needed to be able to pass the ball, then when they couldn't run it effectively, Milroe stepped up and did that. So I thought that's what happened with Alabama there. Let's talk about Arkansas, and I'll go ahead and put the graphic up for those two teams because they play this week. We'll turn over this to the Arkansas Razorbacks. KJ Jefferson, guys, continues to just play his guts out. I mean, he plays hard. Just too many mistakes for Arkansas at the end of the day. They got a little bit better on the offensive line, particularly in the second half. I think they shift some guys around and, are getting a little bit better production there, but there's just lacks an element of explosiveness out of this offense. I don't know what it's going to take for Dan Enos and KJ Jefferson and company to be able to get some of that explosiveness out of it. I mean, they've got to find, is that something that Isaiah Sategna could provide? I mean, they've got to find more of a deep threat, and also just being able to only run the football for 36 yards against a Ole Miss team that is not exactly the 85 Bears on defense. That's just something that you've got to do better, and you got to find a way to produce. I just don't know that you can realistically expect to win a football game in the SEC only rushing for that low amount of yards. Now, we know Alabama just did it, okay, rushing for a very small amount against Texas A&M. But when you're rushing for under 50 yards in a game, you're just putting a lot on your quarterback, and eventually mistakes are going to be made. Did have a couple picks in this game. Yeah, but we need to see somebody that is more of a explosive threat out of that offense. I don't know where exactly it's going to come from. But, hey, Arkansas's got to continue to grind here because now they've got to go, as we just mentioned, in this game on the road to Alabama, a place they haven't won in a long time. And Sam Pittman and company have got to fight to show that this program is going to continue to fight. So definitely learned that Arkansas can play with just about anybody, guys. We saw what they did on the road now twice, competing against really good teams like LSU, like Ole Miss, okay, Texas A&M, that one got away from them in between. But now which team will show up? Will they be able to limit Alabama's run game and limit explosive plays? I thought the defense actually held pretty well, only allowed 153 passing yards to a Jackson Dart and company that have played really well. They did allow Quinshaw Junkins and Ulysses Bentley to get going. Particularly Bentley had 94 yards on the ground for Ole Miss. But, it's just like, hey, when one side of the ball plays well, can the other one match it up that night? Got to get complimentary play if you're Arkansas and find ways to help KJ Jefferson out because the guy can't do it all himself. Now, as we go down, Auburn did not play. They'll play this week in a matchup against LSU. My only question for Auburn is, in the bye week, did they come up with a plan for Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford? They didn't use Robbie Ashford as much as I thought they should have in that Georgia game, particularly what he was doing. You got to have a better plan for those guys and be able to figure out what's best for your offense. Is it just go with Robbie Ashford, period? So I'm excited to see what happens there for this Auburn team as they will be heading in to LSU later this week. Now, let's talk about Florida. Florida had a bunch of injuries, a bunch of guys that didn't play. Trevor Etienne didn't play. You had Aguakon didn't play. Austin Barber was held out. So, guys, I don't think we learned a whole lot about this Florida team against Vanderbilt. Sometimes you just got to win and survive, win and move on, and that's what they did. Trayon Webb stepped up at running back and did some good things, so that was good for them to see him get some production there. Montrell Johnson looked great. Graham Mertz was efficient once again and continues to make the plays that he should make against inferior competition, in particularly. Now he's got to step up and do it when it counts, especially on the road. Not tremendous against Kentucky a couple of weeks ago, but he looked great in this game, and now he's going to have to go to Columbia, South Carolina, and put together 4 quarters of play on the road. And listen, Florida's going to have to be able to run the ball on the road. We know that Florida can run the ball. We know that Florida can run the ball even with backup offensive linemen for the first part, as they did in this game. Now, Vanderbilt is atrocious at stopping the run, and Florida didn't just start off this game like a house on fire. I mean, they didn't do tremendously great right from the jump, but they ended up having a lot of balance, almost 500 yards of offense, 280 yards rushing, 280 yards passing, 215 yards rushing for the Gators. And like I said, Montrell Johnson looked really good doing things for him, 18 carries, 135 yards. And like I said, Trayon Webb is a guy who was highly recruited. He was committed to Georgia for a long time, ends up flipping to Florida before it was all said and done. So he gets some experience with Etienne out of this one. But like I said, Graham Mertz, I think he's playing really well. The defense, I don't know how much you learned going up against Vanderbilt. Ken Seals had a decent day for him over there, but I think Florida has got to continue to find ways to turn people over. They've got to be more efficient on getting people off the field, and they did that in this game. That's what I think you got to be most encouraged about. Vanderbilt held to 1 out of 10 on third downs. Only converted 1 of 10, 0 of 3 on fourth down. So that is being elite at getting off of the field. I don't care who you're playing. That's an encouraging sign for Austin Armstrong's defense, and we'll see what the Gators have going forward as they travel to Columbia this week. The Georgia Bulldogs. Here's what we learned about the Georgia Bulldogs. If you're gonna talk junk about the King, if you're gonna come at the King, you better not miss. They're gonna bring it on you in a hurry. And Georgia absolutely laid the smackdown on Kentucky at home. I was there to witness that game, and it was absolutely surgical what Carson Beck, Mike Bobo, Brock Bowers, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint did to that Kentucky defense. Anything they wanted was wide open. I mean, Carson Beck had all day to throw. He sat back there. He just went through his progressions and ripped Kentucky apart. And this is a good Kentucky football team. You're talking about a football team that defensively is structured a lot of the same way that Georgia does things in terms of how they play physical and the point of attack and get hats to the ball and all that kind of stuff. And you typically don't see people running wide open on a Brad White defense, but Georgia was able to Mike Bobo was able to manipulate those guys with the play action because Georgia was able to run the ball a lot better than they had in previous games. Kendall Milton actually looked healthy and looked good in this one, which is something that I think is a big for Georgia. If they can have a change up off of Daijun Edwards. Daijun Edwards continues to run the ball very, very well and look really good doing it. But Carson Beck, guys, is a legitimate Heisman Trophy candidate. This guy has thrown for almost 1,900 yards, 11 touchdowns to 3 interceptions on the years, completing 74% of his passes, and has already had 2 big comeback wins for Georgia this year. He's already had, Heisman type moment in that Auburn game at the end, being able to lead that drive for them. And now comes out and just absolutely torches Kentucky. Like I said, it was a complete effort. Georgia's defense, I thought, played really well. They still had a couple of miscues in terms of not being able to contain things and allowing people to get outside of them, on the edges there. But when you're playing as aggressively as Georgia does, that's going to happen from time to time, I suppose. But they really limited Ray Davis, and we're just way more physical at the point of contact and more physical than that Kentucky team consistently this week. And that's just a huge win for the team in general to finally come out and look and play like everybody thinks Georgia should look and play. Has to do a lot for the confidence and the morale with that team, as now they head on the road to Vanderbilt, and then they will have a bye week before the cocktail party on October 28th, and then a brutal stretch run. Missouri, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia Tech, all of those teams playing pretty good ball right now, including Georgia Tech, who beat Miami on the road. So Georgia's priming up for a big run after the bye week that is going to be a brutal schedule. And if they play like they played this past week, I don't care who it is they're playing, they're gonna win. They're gonna be in the SEC championship game, is what we learned, if they continue to play at this pace, because Georgia finally looked like Georgia, and Carson Beck is like I said, legitimate Heisman contender. Now, Kentucky, I don't think we learned a whole lot from Kentucky other than they're not on Georgia's level yet. We knew this, okay? We knew that they didn't have the horses to run that race. I told everybody coming in to the week that, hey, when you got two teams that are very similar in their style of play and how they go about doing things, and wanted to be physical at the point of attack, and it's on the road, a night game at the defending back-to-back national champions who haven't had a night game in forever, you're walking into a buzzsaw. And that's what happened. And they weren't able to execute on some of the opportunities that they did have. There were a few plays open down the field that Devin Leary has to hit, and he just absolutely didn't. He can't be accurate enough this year. It's just not in him. I don't know what's going on, but he's not able to make the plays that he needs to make for this Kentucky team to be as successful as it can be against really, really high-quality teams. We saw it all throughout the beginning part of the year. You guys, nobody was bigger thinking a proponent of Devin Leary, thinking how much that was going to benefit this offense with Liam Cohen, with Dane Key, with all those receivers over there, Robinson, Brown. But it has not come to fruition. Ray Davis has been great. He's been trying to do everything he can, but you can't run the football exclusively against teams that are as dominant up front as a Georgia defense is. So Kentucky has to bounce back. They got to come back at home. Hopefully, for their sake, people are healthy. Trevin Wallace left the game with a shoulder injury. Keyshawn Silver also had a shoulder injury and didn't return. Barian Brown has a hamstring problem. So they are beat up with Missouri coming into town. But Kentucky, if you are the Wildcats, you learned that, hey, you have to be able to execute in the passing game to be able to help out Ray Davis, and Devin Leary is unable to do so. They also weren't able to protect him very, very well at times, especially when they get behind the chains, when the picture is not a third and manageable, where the run game is an option involved. And Georgia was able to pin their ears back and bring in that package of linebackers on third and long to be able to rush the passer. That's just not Kentucky's strength. And if they're having to play from behind like that, they're in a little bit of trouble. So Kentucky needs to continue to try to start fast in these games, control things with the run, and play better defensively. They got lost, guys, against Brock Bowers. There was too many times that Mike Bobo just played chess when Brad White and Mark Stoops were playing checkers, it seemed, and how they were covering Brock Bowers and how they were losing some of these receivers down the field. So not your typical performance by Kentucky. I don't think we learned a ton about them because, like I said, I don't think it was a fair fight, really. They were going into this matchup, and they were outclassed from the beginning, and I think some of the hype was a little unrealistic after that performance versus Florida. But now they get a chance to really win a game that can be a big deal for the program and set them up. Listen, I predicted them to go 10-2 before the season. If you want to win those 10 games in the regular season, Kentucky's got to win this one against Missouri going forward. So that is what we learned about the Kentucky Wildcats. The LSU Fighting Tigers went into Columbia, Missouri, and took down the Missouri Tigers. And now they'll have another battle with a Tigers team with Auburn coming in this week. But what we learned about LSU is quite simply that I think this is the best offense in the country. It's going to be tough for any defense to totally stop them. As the late, great Stuart Scott used to say, you can't hope to stop them. You can only hope to contain them, okay? Because that's just not going to happen. You're not going to stop them. You can only hope that you can limit the damage that Jaden Daniels is able to do. He had a tremendous performance with his legs, also was able to light it up, throwing once again. Logan Diggs has become such a vital part of what LSU is able to do offensively. Guys, there was a time where Jaden Daniels, specifically most of last year, early this year, had to do every single thing for this team. Was the leading rusher. He, of course, was having to run things on the quarterback end as well. But now they have balance, and they have a guy who can take a little bit of that burden off of Logan Diggs, off of Jaden Daniels and Logan Diggs, and he's a patient runner, but he's also physical when he needs to be. I think that's a really, really big added element. We know how talented Malik Neighbors is. He continues just to torch opposing teams. But the thing about it is defensively, they are still horrendous. They gave up 527 yards of offense to Missouri. They get guys lost in zone coverage. They get beat in man coverage. You go look at the stat sheet for them, and you see a lot of guys in the secondary with leading them in tackles a lot. That's because that's where most of the plays are being made back there. People are getting into their secondary with regularity. Missouri was able to run the ball on them pretty effectively with Cody Schrader at times. And hey, you just have to be able to play more gap sound and have less bust on the back end. There's too much talent on the front end of that LSU defense to not be able to make more stops when needed. However, do got to give them credit. A big turnover on downs at one point, and also 2 interceptions. That this defense, while they did not play great, they stepped up when they needed to in key moments. Major Burns able to have that pick 6 there, and then Harold Perkins. That pick by Harold Perkins was huge. Could be in terms of if LSU is able to, run the table. If they were to beat Alabama at home, people will look back at that play that Harold Perkins made when Missouri was able to have, I think, 22-10 lead at the time, and they were pushing for more points, and Harold Perkins drops back and picks off Brady Cook. That'll be a big play that people look at going forward, because what an effort that was, and then that led to points for LSU. So that's what we learned about the LSU Tigers, is that, hey, Jaden Daniels and this offense may be the best one in the country, but the defense has a long, long way to go for them to be able to play complimentary football, and they still aren't that great on special teams either. So Brian Kelly got work to do as they head forward to week 7 with Auburn coming into town. Mississippi State, they just kind of did what they needed to do against Western Michigan, won that football game. But the biggest thing is Will Rogers goes out with an injury. How long is he going to miss? What's the status of that going forward? That's going to be a big deal for Mississippi State. Now, the good news for them is they have a bye week. Maybe it's nothing too serious, and he can get back by the time they have to travel to Arkansas. But you just hate it for him and hope that he's able to finish out this year as much as he's meant to that Mississippi State program over there. I think that Mike Wright will be just fine. They'll have to change things, what they do a little bit in terms of, him being more involved in the run game, things like that. But hey, when it comes to Mississippi State, they're still finding, it seems like, an identity offensive wise. They're trying to run the football a little bit better. And then, I think that we know what you're going to get out of Zach Arnett's defense. You're going to get a defense that sometimes is athletically overmatched, but they play very, very hard, and they go, for 4 quarters and try to make plays over there. And now everybody's got to rest up and try to get healthy for Mississippi State as they head in to the rest of their SEC schedule after the bye week, and that will start with Arkansas for them. Missouri, guys, that we just talked about against LSU, Brady Cook played tremendous for most of that game. He put up nearly 400 yards passing, but did throw 2 picks, 2 very crucial picks. That, I think, obviously the pick 6, it is what it is at the end, and he was just kind of forcing things, trying to get a drive started there. And you're backed up in your own territory, that is what it is. But the pick right before, late in the second quarter, that Harold Perkins got, and then they were able to get points off of it in LSU. That's one that you can't have. They missed a key kick. They didn't convert on 4th down. One time that really hurt them. So I think, you had to know coming into this game that you were going to have to trade blows with that LSU offense and play almost perfect football. They didn't run the ball as well as they wanted to. I know Cody Schrader had over 100 yards on the day, but I think if you would, ask Eli Drinkwitz, they'd want to be a little bit more efficient in the run game, even though they had a big day throwing the football around the yard. Like I said, Luther Burden continues to be a freak, and he's getting some complementary weapons there that are really stepping up with Mookie Cooper. And I thought Theo Wease has really came along quite well over the last couple of weeks, especially the former Oklahoma, standout that now is doing his thing for Missouri over there. So overall, I think the offensive line is doing a pretty good job of helping out Brady Cook. They kept him clean for most of the day. Only gave up 2 sacks on the day. And listen, when you're going against a front as aggressive as LSU's and as talented as LSU's, and that's a good job by your offensive line. But I do think they need to find a little bit more balance and being able to run the football a little bit better. So Brady Cook doesn't have to feel like he's got to force things, especially in tight situations there towards the end. Gives them a little bit more balance, opens up the playbook a little bit more if you're able to do that. But Luther Burden, Theo Wease, Mookie Cooper, they're really playing quite well. And I think this Missouri team now gets the benefit of going up against a Kentucky team that's a little bit banged up. So can they go on the road and play at a high level as they go to Kentucky and kind of flush this LSU loss, because a lot of the goals and stuff are still out there ahead of Missouri as they head to Kentucky, and Kentucky the same thing. So I'm looking forward to that matchup and seeing what's going on there. Now, let's talk about Ole Miss. Ole Miss played that Arkansas team that we talked about earlier. They didn't click offensively as well as they would have liked, but they were able to run the football well enough to be able to get things going. I think that defense and the way that it contained, Rocket Sanders, KJ Jefferson, the run game really just continued to make Arkansas's offensive line look bad. I think you have to love that if you're Lane Kiffin. Love that you can win a game where you don't have your fastball, so to speak, offensively. And that just shows a little bit more completeness of a program, showed, toughness, albeit at home. So I think, when it comes down to it, Lane Kiffin and company, not exactly maybe the level of play that they wanted to get out of Jackson Dart and those rebel playmakers over there. But at the end of the day, a win is a win, and they were able to be very, very good defensively after, not a great effort against LSU just a couple weeks ago. So I think when you're talking about this Ole Miss team, are you able to play complementary football at times when you need to? And they did. Now the question for Ole Miss is, okay, how is Jackson Dart? I know he's banged up a little bit. Trey Harris is banged up a little bit. They weren't playing quite at full speed. Only 16 to 25 for Jackson Dart through the air, 153 yards. So not your typical performance of a Lane Kiffin offense there. We know their identity is they want to run the football first, but then they're typically explosive behind that in the passing game. Weren't able to be that. So we'll see how they do going forward. I know this is an Ole Miss team that is quite confident. I know they're kicking themselves how they played against Alabama. Now they get that bye week to recover a little bit before they have to go on the road to Auburn in a couple weeks. So Lane Kiffin and company sitting here with just one loss at the midway point of the season. I think if you injected truth serum into anybody over there at Ole Miss, they would say they would take that. But obviously, they feel they could easily be undefeated right now, and they have an opportunity to heal up and get in a great position going forward as this stretch run heads down. And they've got big games coming up in that second half of the season with Auburn, Texas A&M, Georgia, all that in the back end of that schedule. So rest up, Ole Miss, because a gauntlet is coming in your direction over there. South Carolina, once again, a bye week. They didn't play this week, so listen, there couldn't be a bigger game, I don't think, for Shane Beamer and company coming up. Can they get healthy was the big question. I don't know if Juice Wells has gotten any closer to being able to play with that foot. Ja'Kai Moore, is he able to go? So hopefully they were able to rest up and get a little bit healthy and get a big game plan for Florida coming in, because this is a huge game just for momentum and the trajectory of this program. They're recruiting well, things like that, but they need to get some momentum back on the field. And Shane Beamer has a big opportunity to do that this week as Florida is coming into town. And, it'll be a crazy environment as always. Spencer Rattler, can they help him out a little bit? That's always the question with South Carolina, but I think we'll learn more with press conferences today and stuff on people's availability, on their health, all that kind of stuff. But getting a Ja'Kai Moore, maybe even a Casey Henry, somebody like that, can they get any of those offensive linemen back and help get some depth there up front? That would be huge. Tennessee, like we said, they were on a bye week, so we didn't have an opportunity to learn anything there. The biggest thing is we're going to learn, just like I said with South Carolina, is Tennessee fully healthy? They got to get Cooper Mays going 100%. He came back in the last game, provided a little bit of a boost there on that offensive front. They've had, Jalen Wright's been banged up at times. Deontay Thornton is got to come back from injury. So I think that'll be the biggest thing, is how healthy is Tennessee going forward. And we'll find that out as Josh Heupel and company have their press conferences there in Tennessee this week. We'll find out a little bit more information about who is healthy and ready to go. Texas A&M, I thought they were tremendously disruptive up front. I mean, of course, 6 sacks against Alabama limited them. Alabama had negative 13 yards rushing at halftime, but just gave up too many big plays on the back end. You can't continue to lose Jermaine Burton back there, shades of what they did against Miami, as we talked about earlier. So not a great look for A&M in the secondary back there. DJ Durkin and company have to get that fixed, because they're going to face some teams in the second half of the year that have the ability to throw the football, and that starts with on the road at Rocky Top this week. We know Joe Milton, when accurate, can put that thing out there a mile. So they're going to have to prevent big plays, and we're going to have to learn, can Max Johnson play just a little bit cleaner. Okay, Max Johnson, at times there were some guys open. I know there was a bunch of pressure that Alabama had. They pressured him hard and didn't allow him to have a clean picture a lot of times. But And Max Johnson makes some plays. He's a guy that you're going to see him make some plays, but he's also going to miss a few things. Had a key interception, and just a couple of open receivers that if he had it to do over again, I know that he would love to either pull the trigger on when he didn't throw it, or that he would hope to be a little bit more accurate on. Anaya Smith just continues to be like a video game, cheat code type deal on punt returns, and then he's very productive in the passing game as well. My question is, do you start using Anaya Smith at running back a little bit? Just find different ways to get him touches. They haven't been very, very effective running the football this year, not overly effective. So got to find ways to be creative. I think Tennessee is a very disruptive defense. So can the offensive line hold up? They only are 60th in the country when it comes to havoc allowed. So they allow a lot of negative plays at times. Defensively, Texas A&M's front is so good. It's so good, guys. Adrian Cooper is playing at a just next world level. 3 sacks on the day. Fadil Diggs, another couple of sacks for him. Walter Nolan had a sack. He came off the field at one point banged up. I think he did re-enter that game, so we'll see how he does there. But really, it's just that back end for Texas A&M. Can they prevent from having bust? You got hit with a couple double moves at times. So Texas A&M, a huge. Can you not let Alabama beat you twice is the question here. But I think what main thing we learned is this is a tough Texas A&M team. They're very talented, and they're not far off from being right there at the very upper echelon of the SEC. So this is a great test to go on the road. Couldn't get it done at home against Alabama. So can you prevent Alabama from beating you twice as you head into where the Volunteers are going to be playing? Then Vanderbilt, guys, I don't have much to say against Vanderbilt. They just, until they get more talent in that program, they're not going to be able to compete consistently in the SEC. And now they have Georgia coming into town. So congratulations on that. Another beatdown coming your way in terms of Vanderbilt. But guys, that is what we learned in week 6 of college football action for the SEC. We'll have all the previews, predictions, analysis, betting tips, everything you could want right here on Southeastern 14 as we head into week 7. Guys, make sure that you like, subscribe, turn on notifications, check out Chomps in the description below if you want a 15% discount on some good protein snacks, whether it's beef, venison, turkey, great flavors over there. The jalapeno beef, my favorite over there. We have a show with Tavares King and Noshawn Marino every Wednesday at 8:30. So check that out, 8:30 Eastern, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 Central. We'll go live with that on Wednesday nights. And then every single day, Chris Lee, Gavin Schoenwald have a daily show. Blake Lovell is starting his basketball daily show today. So if there is any kind of SEC news, notes, coverage that you want, this is the place for it right here at Southeastern 14. And again, if you guys want to partner with us, you can hit up Caroline.Smith at Southeastern 14 for any kind of advertising opportunities that you would like to utilize for this audience that is growing and growing. Well over 150,000 unique viewers in the last month, and that's going up closer to the 200,000 mark as we approach things. Growing subscribers by the day. So join in here with us. Make sure you're here every single morning and afternoon as well for SEC coverage. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, hit that like button before you go. I'm Blayne Gilmer. This is Southeastern 14. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you next time for more SEC football coverage right here on Southeastern 14.